Hello, this is Rita, and this is me and my mommy's podcast, and then my mommy, and there's me, and I'm just talking about this stuff, and there's me tap dancing, because this is a tap dancing slash autism podcast, and there's a bunch of animals, and I'll be trying to eat my hair, and there's a bunch of sand in the ocean. Also, there's all the soul talk stuff. I love all my mentors and babes. And also, yes, like life stuff and tap dancing. Oh, and also there are my boots. My boots are amazing. Also, there's me, trying not to have a panic attack. Also, this is a podcast about me, autism, and tap dancing, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just ADHD in this thing. Also, there's my cute, adorable puppies.
Welcome to another Friends Fridays here at Lita's Tap Styles. Today we have Jennifer Celeste Briggs. Jenny, I am absolutely terrible at introducing people. So do you mind introducing yourself like you're meeting someone at a coffee shop or just on the street trying to explain your book and everything?
Sure. Well, firstly, I'm glad you called me Jenny because although I put Jennifer Celeste Briggs as my author name, I do go by Jenny or by Mom. My two favorite people in the world call me Mom. And when my oldest daughter, Sarah, was very little, right away we knew something was different. It took a while to figure out what was different and why she was having trouble meeting her milestones. And when she was 4, then she still wasn't speaking. So I decided to run a home therapy program for her, and that made a huge difference. And I wrote a book about it called Watching Sarah Rise. And that is what brings me here today.
Some of our audience may not be familiar with the Sunrising program that you turned around and made into the Sarah Rise program. Do you mind explaining a little bit about it to them?
Sure. Yeah. The Sunrise program, it's spelled SON because it was named for the first sun. It was started by Bears and Samaria Kaufman in the 1970s when their son, Ron, who was diagnosed as severely autistic, they were told to put him into an institution. And instead they decided, no, we're going to work with him at home. And so they set up a playroom that would be not overly filled with toys or things on the walls. It would be free from distraction, and they would do what he was doing. So instead of shutting down any repetitive behaviors, they would join those behaviors and really try to understand what was motivating him and show him that they loved him and were there by doing that. And that made a tremendous difference. After 3 years of 12 hours a day of one-on-one time with them or of their volunteers, then he was ready to be in mainstream school, connecting with others. He went on to go to college and actually was the global director for the Autism Treatment Center of America, which is where they teach parents to run Sunrise programs. So, Oh, just after that success, then other parents started coming to Bears and Samaria being like, hey, can you help us? So then that's why they started the Autism Treatment Center of America. And Bears wrote a book called Sunrise. And then it was remade as Sunrise, the Miracle Continues, as it was out in the world for a while. I read that book in college and thought, wow, what an amazing story. I almost would want to run a Sunrise program, but I didn't have kids at that time. So then fast forward to my daughter Sarah being 4 and still not speaking, and we thought we got to do something. I decided to go and be trained for how to run a program for her.
You mentioned the repetitive movements. I know Lita and I deal with a lot of parents who are like, we need to shut down the stimming. Obviously not us. My child, you can put that into your microphone because you say it better than me.
I'm just saying we could just tie them to a chair and put them through the trauma that their children are going through. Well, I break their ever-loving souls. I got them.
She had some therapists who tried to, before I realized what they were doing and got in the room and was like, no, my 4-year-old is not going through this.
Oh, except I'm not breastfeeding anyone allergens because I'm not going down for being a murderer.
She also had a speech therapist. That's a different story. But the one she's talking about being tied to a chair, she had an ABA therapist who was trying to stop her stimming by tying her to a chair. We have a lot of parents who are like, stop the stimming. You don't want them stimming. You were.
I just wanted to catch the ever-loving ball.
You mentioned the fun part of having a 13-year-old as the co-host. She has opinions. You mentioned repetitive movements and, allowing kids to do it. Why did you allow Sarah to continue stimming from your point of view?
From my perspective and the perspective of those who train parents in the Sunrise program, it is because that is your doorway. That is your bridge to making the connection. Instead of trying to force your kid to join your world, you want to go over and be in their world first and then be like, hey, don't I seem like a nice tour guide? Would you like to maybe come look at this other aspect of the world? So for Sarah, she loved opening and closing lids. And sometimes we would be in the room and I would have my own container and she would have a container and we would be opening and closing lids for half an hour. And then she would look at me and then I would be ready to say something about whatever was in the container or say the word lid, whatever it was that I thought she might be interested in. And then she was ready because she trusted me to give her the respect and the time and the space that she needed.
Lita Stim happens to be a complicated 3-point tap step.
Amazing. A little harder to join.
It's a little harder to join, but we put her in tap classes, and that's where she started picking up the idea of, oh, I can talk to people. Words have meanings.
Yes.
And I know there's been a lot of research, on dance with not autism, but let's just assume all brains work slightly alike here, right? With Parkinson's and stroke and dementia and Alzheimer's and TBI in adults, not in children yet, stating that movement, dance, and the rhythm, like of opening and closing a box, may be stimulating the language portions of the brain.
Yes, I would believe that. Definitely.
I'd like to see them move that over into the children's area at some point so we could all prove this.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. But hey, or at least look at the autistic adults. I mean, there's enough of them out there now.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing we get on a regular basis from adults, like especially one of the reasons we pulled her out of dance and started an entire dance studio for her, was that they felt autism was so new. But you mentioned the Sunrise program's a 70s project.
Yes. And probably people have had it for much longer before that, I would guess. It's just that people are getting more refined in the diagnosis and how they interpret it.
I'm my trains, and I'm going to use, autistic terms like trains a little bit here, is academic research. I grew up in academia, and I love telling people the first use of autism in a academic journal paper was 1911.
Wow.
The first use of ADD, which is now ADHD, and the first diagnosis was in 1786.
Wow.
So I did notice that autism became right about 1934, because all the good autism research was coming out of a little country in Europe. The Americans got involved, and like all those old white guys split it up into a whole bunch of different, they wanted their names on papers. Can you talk just a little bit about Sarah? You said was non-speaking. I don't if she was nonverbal or just non-speaking. How was it as a mother having a child who you couldn't really communicate with?
It was very difficult, especially because in the early years, she didn't really like to eat and she was diagnosed as failure to thrive. So it was incredibly challenging to find foods that she would want to eat. And it made a huge difference once one of our speech therapists suggested making a food board with pictures of her favorite foods so that she could have some agency in picking what we were giving her. So I'd say that, plus we also taught her sign language. That was a huge help, just her being able to communicate at all. But then once she began to speak, it was like a new world opened up for her and for us to just go beyond what we could imagine for signing or imagine for putting onto a picture.
We tried the picture boards and the sign language with Lita, but she didn't have enough receptive at the point in time to understand what we were. I mean, that was fun having a totally. Yeah, that was what I was doing with my hands. She's like, what were you doing with your hands? But she didn't understand anything like stop, go, stay here. You obviously never gave up on Sarah. Was there ever a point in time where early on in the diagnosis you were like, well, this is it. We're never going to have a normal child, so we're not going to do stuff to try and help her out?
No, but I would say emotionally, I felt like I gave up many, many times and would be crying in the kitchen and cursing and ranting and raving to no one. No one was there, or crying on the phone to my mom and just feeling like, how are we getting from here to there, whether it's through crawling or can she lift her head or can she speak or anything? It just so many times felt so daunting and so hard. But every time she would do the tiniest bit of anything more than she had been doing, it was like, oh my gosh, if this is possible, then maybe she can do it another time. Maybe she can do a tiny bit more. So the hope was also really contagious for me, my husband, our extended family members. So I think that really helped a ton. And you're right. We absolutely always kept thinking that we didn't know the answer. No prognosis is set in stone. And we just wanted to dream as big as we could dream for her while also staying present with loving her exactly as she was, even if she didn't change at all.
I mean, the hope, because I had those days of it's just not going to get better. And I'm on the spectrum. She's on the spectrum. Her dad's on the spectrum. I should have known it gets better. But there's a difference between, like what you said, the being on the ground going, this is never going to get better. And we're talking to parents who are like, it's not worth trying the therapies. It's not worth putting them in activities.
Mm.
Okay.
I don't know if I ever had that. I think I always wanted to try everything we could possibly try.
That, yeah, I'm like, that's when I'm like, maybe not give up the hope yet.
I think that a lot of times parents have such big emotions themselves, and if they don't get the support for those emotions, then that can lead to the giving up. And it's so helpful for me time and again to give myself space to have the emotions, no matter how ugly and horrible they seem to me. But if I get them out, then they're gone. They're like out of my system, and then I can think clearly about moving forward.
You have something you want to add, kiddo?
I will ever love and tell you to ever love and share because ever love and I hate how ever love and stupid you are because I can't deal with your stupidness anymore. So help me if I hear one more of you say, "Oh, I'm smart." No, not if you were smart, you would be able to know that this is easier than rocket science. This is easier than ever love and rocket science.
Hey,
All the people
maybe
who know rocket science are ever loving that this. Give me one nerd typical person who does ever love and science, ever love it right.
maybe a little bit less. Okay, so translation from Lita. That was not directed at you. That was directed at the other parent she's dealt with.
Yeah, with the way
That
you
have-
had some people. Sorry.
Thank you for clarifying.
she is very passionate about the parents who are like, it's not worth it. I don't understand what autism is. It's not worth me understanding what autism is. My child is just never going to do better, and I'm not going to
Can I
help
just
them.
punch them?
No, violence is not the answer.
To make them shut up. So violence not the answer. Then why there are so many ever loving words in history?
Calm down just a little bit. It's a passionate subject for her, if you can't tell.
Understandably.
With the Sarah Rise program, and I'm not saying every program works for every child, obviously. You have to find the one that works for you. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
I know we had Lita in massive speech and language pathology. Like we were going 5 days a week to the therapy clinics, all that fun jazz. And it was at one point in time, we were living one town over, and I was having to drive an hour and a half to therapy and an hour and a half home from therapy every day. Did you ever get just totally exhausted?
I did get exhausted. Before we started Sunrise, we also were going to lots of therapies, and I was driving an hour plus each way for some of them. I think the progress that we kept seeing balanced out any amount of fatigue. But I will also say, I also had a ton of help. I had so many volunteers. And then I had a full time helper. My sister in law moved across the country to be my full time helper. Even with that, it was still a lot to manage and to train the volunteers and watch them and talk with them. But it was amazing. And we got the best people. So it was a lot of work. And it was also the most heart filling, rewarding, amazing thing I think I've ever done with my life.
We were in a smaller town, and she had outpaced what they could triage at their speech and language pathology and OT in town. So they're like, you've got to go to the big town an hour away because she's taking a spot from a kid who needs it. And she still couldn't say like her R's and her T's and her ST's and all that. It was like, I know you were not fond of that speech therapy clinic because they were the ones who were like, here, you're going to eat pizza, whether or not you have a texture issue with it.
That's tough.
She may have gagged and thrown up on them, and they're like, why? And I'm like,
Oh.
because this is not how we do it. You are not going to say that one again. Did Sarah ever have difficulties? Because Lita had some difficulties with therapist, and my first thing was, look, it's not that you're wrong. It's that she's not connecting with you, so we need to try someone else. Did you guys ever have that with some of your volunteers?
No, not with the volunteers. They were all just incredible. And I think what is noteworthy is none of them were specialists, none of them were trained. They were just showing up being like, hey, I think what you're doing is cool and I want to help. So they were really open to my training, and I would observe what they were doing and give them feedback, and we'd talk. If they were feeling discouraged or like they didn't know how to respond when she did something, then I could give them ideas. So it was all really a very loving approach. And the whole rule from the beginning is, hey, you follow Sarah's lead. If she wants to do this, you do it. If she says no, you listen, you respect, you back up. So there wasn't ever going to be something of forcing her to do something that she didn't want to do.
Oh, the one person telling everyone that with her care team was her neurologist. And I'm like, you can do that because you're higher up on the food chain than little old mommy. And he may have made some therapists mad. The neurologist, they're a little higher up than your speech and language pathology and your OTs and everyone. I had one speech, the one who kept threatening or forcing her to eat pizza, her neurologist just went off going, exactly where in this do you think this is helpful? He's like, if I did that, I'd be throwing up on you too.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, you can say that. You're the neurologist. I say it and I'm mom and no one listens to me.
And yet I feel like parents are the real specialists because we are with our kids more than anybody else. And we also care so, so deeply that we are willing to do these really hard, time intensive things.
I have a great relationship with her neurologist. He's still out in Florida. We're here in Colorado Springs. I can call him up and go, hi, I need you to fix this for me. And he's like, who do I need to go yell at now? Because they're not listening to you. But he's also the parent of an autistic kid.
That may help.
And he's autistic himself. And he's like, you know her better than the rest of us. You're with her 24/7. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
And sometimes Frank likes to laugh at me because I'm like, I tried to show them the research and they're like, oh, well, I mean, you just have doctorates in physics. How do you know how academic journals work? Can you talk a little bit about how far Sarah has come with the Sarah Rising program?
Yeah. So when we started it, it was in part because I felt like she still wasn't eating enough, even though we had moved beyond the worry about would we need a feeding tube for her. Um, she was nonverbal. She wasn't toilet trained. Forget reading and writing. I mean, she was 4, but she wasn't really playing imaginatively or playing games, even the simplest, for a while. But as soon as I got back from my training, her language started coming. And then over the course of 5 years, she was potty trained. She went from hating having her hair washed to washing it on her own. She learned to read and write a little bit, play imaginatively, play games, connect with people, make eye contact easily, which had also been really challenging for her. So it was dramatic. And that's not to say she doesn't still need help. She goes to a school where she gets a lot of one on one help, but she's been in her school musical for 3 years. She takes piano lessons. She takes swim lessons. She can swim the length of a pool by herself. She can ride a bike by herself. And that just clicked last year. So although the Sarah Rise program was only 5 years in terms of the really intensive bit and having volunteers in the house, it is now also part of our lifestyle where, of course, we're not going to force her to do something if she's really hating it. And of course, we're going to join her repetitive desires if she wants to. A lot of times now, those are verbal, and she wants us to say back a certain thing, which in many ways I think grown-ups could learn from her. I can learn from her that she goes out into the world and she wants me to say a certain thing, and she's going to tell me, say this thing without any embarrassment or concern or worry over what I might think. It's like, no, I want you to say this thing. And then I'm going to say this other thing, and then we'll have this conversation. It's amazing to see that confidence in her.
I know when I was younger, my parents put me in therapy, as was the thing that you did back then, is put them in psychiatric and psychiatrist and therapist. Not to teach me to speak. I was in speech therapy and occupational and all this, but to teach me how to mask and not be autistic. And it is so amazing to see these younger generation kids being able to be their authentic autistic self.
Yes, Sarah actually won I didn't even know it was a contest, but at her school for this last year, she won the most original Halloween costume because she was a rainbow tiger striped for rent sign. And that was all her idea. Yes, it was awesome.
Lita's usually finding some odd, obscure, foreign animated series, and she's like, Mom, I need you to design this for me. And then the next year, it becomes like, I could have gone to Party City and picked it up. You just were ahead of the curve, kiddo.
Yeah.
Sarah is reaching 18, you said.
Yes.
How scary is that as a mom who's about to have to watch her kind of fly the nest and take off on her wings on her own?
Well, I might be in denial somewhat, but so far I'm not actually scared. She's only a junior in school right now because we kept her in lower grades for a long time when she was younger to have her development match where the kids were that she was with rather than the age peers. And then that meant we needed to hop her forward. But we still have another year and a half of high school. And then her specialized program, it's called the St. Anthony School Program, that goes through 2 years at Duquesne University, which is a local college. So their post-secondary program will really help her with how do you have a job or how do you take care of things in an apartment. We certainly think she'll need a lot of support going forward with anything, but we found so many amazing people all along this journey, from the early volunteers now through her bus driver. We just lucked out and they are best buds. And I think, wow, that was just luck or the universe looking out for us or something. So I could get myself all scared, but I am choosing to say, it's worked out so far. I am just going to trust that we will keep finding the people that we need that delight in her and support her.
You mentioned that the program will teach her like things about how to be in an apartment. I've got enough Gen Z interns and employees I've dealt with. I think maybe the neurotypical ones of them need it too.
Probably. That's right.
they're sitting there going, I don't know how to pay my rent. And I'm like, did your parents fail to teach you a thing or two? Can you talk a little bit more about the program in case parents are wondering about,
Mhm.
you said the college, my brain clocked the college and then it just went away. Sorry about
So
that.
for her school program that she's in,
Yeah,
or the Sunrise program?
the one for the college
The college,
and
she's
the
in the St. Anthony School program is what it's called. As far as I know, that's just a Pittsburgh-based thing, but it is a program that has classrooms within Catholic schools around the city, starting as early as, I believe, preschool or kindergarten. Sarah joined it when she was in first grade. And so in the resource rooms, they get a lot of one-on-one support. Maybe they're doing their reading and their math one-on-one or like small groups. But then as each kid is able, they join the mainstream classes for however much time works for them. And that is partly why we picked that program for Sarah. We really loved that on any given day, they would be like, well, what makes sense for Sarah today? Does it make sense to go to the full art class or 10 minutes or none? And that each day they can reassess what she needs.
did let me see if I can figure out how to. I am having one of those autistic days myself where language is coming hard to me. Did you guys pick the program because it kind of seems to sound like it mirrors a lot of what you were teaching her in her Sarah Rise program?
I think it was largely about the individual treatment and assessment, whereas a lot of the school programs we had also been considering, she would have been in a specialized classroom, but then the whole class would have gone to join the mainstream for something. And we really valued that they would look at her as an individual and that they would be in communication with me about, hey, if she's having days where she's crying a lot. Let's talk about what might be going on and what does she need and does she need a shorter school day? And I just really appreciated how much they wanted my input.
How much? I mean, you're talking about appreciating the input. I know with our dance studio we're starting, all of our kids have a IEP that we're crafting for the dance studio. So we know all their secondary diagnoses, and those of us who understand autism and understand the secondary diagnoses can go up to the non-autistic community teachers and go, you need to watch for this, you need to watch for this, you need to watch for this is how you work with this. And we are individualizing. Our class sizes are, up to 5, but if you're done with ballet 1, we're going to pop you up to ballet 2 as soon. We're not waiting until next season to pop you up. How important is it for Sarah's growth that it is so individualized to what she needs at school?
I think it helps her be okay being who she is and how she is, which is always how we have wanted to support her. I think the other programs that we've done that have really supported that was the British Swim School. That's how she started learning to swim. And now she has a private one-on-one instructor. But I really loved that if she was ready to move up, they'd move her up. And if she wasn't, she could stay at the level she was for a year or a year and a half. And that allowed her and her sister to go at very different speeds. But I could keep taking them on the same day. And that was great. So I think with her school program now, it really is so lovely that they can be like, oh, Sarah really has some big feelings in certain situations. What does she need? And so they talked to her previous teacher from a different school and they ordered a hammock swing because they found out that that was what Sarah needed to help regulate her system. I'm like, wow, that is so amazing and respectful and beautiful.
I agree. I mean, the idea some of these teachers Lita's had within the traditional dance world, they're like, I understand autism. And then the moment I go to try and explain more, because she has an eye tracking issue, and the way they teach pirouettes and turns and across the floor is you have to track a spot on the wall and you cannot lose it. And I'm like, I don't think you understand when she whips her head around, she can't pick it up again. And they're like, well, she's just being lazy.
Mm.
And we've brought in some neurotypical teachers who are like, this is how we do it. And I'm like, you don't understand. Let me blindfold you. Now find that spot on the wall again. And they're like, oh, okay. So we have to figure out how to teach them to turn. Because I'm like, you're just going to get dizzy if you're trying to track something and you can't track.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole way they're doing this is the neurotypical kids without the eye tracking issues. This keeps them from getting dizzy. For someone like Lita, it does nothing but gets her dizzy and gives her a stress headache by the end of the day.
Wow. I think it is so hard to sometimes comprehend that people's brains are just different. Like Sarah's concept of time is so fluid. It is like trying to interact with an Escher art print sometimes, where she will say something today, like she gets home from school, she might tell me something, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that was from when you were 3 or 5, or that was from a book we read 10 years ago. And yet she brings it out as if it's current because I think in her head it is. So we say that she is actually like the librarian for our family memories. If one of us doesn't remember something, like someone's name, we'll say, Sarah, who helped you with blah, blah, blah. And she usually knows. And that's amazing.
Their brains, and I'll let myself into it. It does work different. And it's hard I think, for some of the neurotypical people to grasp that sometimes. With Sarah, you've talked about her being in the school musical. Does she enjoy the musical?
Oh, yes. She loves music and dancing so much. So when she was in 7th and 8th grade to do the school musical there, her resource room teacher, like her main helper, would go with her to rehearsals. And there were some other kids from her resource room also doing the musical. And that was beautiful and it worked very smoothly and easily. When she switched to high school, the rehearsals were suddenly in the evening and on weekends, and the teacher was not going to be the helper. So then that was on me. And that was very intense for both of us and kept her up later at night than she normally would stay up. And it was really hard. And there were tears for both of us. But every time I would say, you don't have to do this. We can stop anytime. She would say, no, 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 I want to do it. I want to do it. And she pushed through and she absolutely loves it. Now she's taking an acting class that is more geared towards her speed of things, and she delights in it just as much as ever.
The number of people, because we're in tight with a bunch of the LA gang, and I'm like, how many of you need to go get your autism diagnosis?
All of them.
Lita's like, all of them, all of them. And there's, been a bit of a coming out finally of people who are finally starting to go, I'm a professional. I've been in this world for 40 years and I am autistic. And I think this is great for the community. You talked about doing it together. How fun was that to do something together with Sarah that wasn't necessarily Sarah Rise, but something adjacent to it in a lot of ways?
In terms of the musical?
In terms of the musical, yeah.
Oh, that was actually really, really hard and not not very fun because at this point she doesn't want my help with things. She doesn't want me to help her practice dance steps. She doesn't want me to help her practice piano. She will practice with her sitter or she will practice with her piano teacher and love that. But she doesn't want me for that role. She wants to do other things with me.
And they didn't find anything else for you to do while you were sitting there, like
Well,
helping out with.
I needed to be there. A lot of times I was just sitting and watching, but I needed to be there in case she did have a time where she was just overtaxed, overstimulated, stressing out, having a meltdown, time to go. And I paid attention to what her blocking was so I could take little movies of the choreography and then she could watch them at home to practice with it. So I was a glorified chauffeur, and yet I did feel like I needed to be there at every moment. And then when it came time for costume changes, I was helping her get in her costume and know when to be ready. But then there were also cast members who took her under their wing and were like, okay, I'll make sure she gets where she needs to be and comes off stage when she needs to come off stage.
costume changes can be a pain in the butt. I know Lita's had some that she's in the wings doing her costume changes.
Luckily, they designed it so we did not have any that had to happen in the wings and we weren't pressed for time. We could be a little relaxed with that.
Yeah, I know it's an hour long today for this one, Lita. She's cute. She is my timekeeper, and she's telling me exactly where we're at. But I've got something at 11, and she's like, "I will keep you on task, mother."
You said
it.
That's awesome.
Not me. You said it.
She.
Not me. You.
Yes, I know. I said
Credit where credit is due.
Yes. Credit where credit is due. I know for her first quick change was when she was 7, and we had her in the wings. She was doing Nutcracker. She will never do Nutcracker again. It may have traumatized her a little bit. Her ballet shoes got stolen behind. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody stole my ballet shoes, and
No.
I almost died.
Well, yeah, because whoever it was not on a quick change, and she was on a quick change, and they're like, "Where are Lita's ballet shoes?" Because she had a 45-second quick change.
Oh no!
And that is not fun when you're an older dancer. It's definitely not fun when they're like, "Okay." Oh, Nutcracker was also how we figured out she was allergic to stick makeup. So it was a production.
Oh my gosh.
But those quick changes were fun because it was full hair, makeup, costume, shoes, 45 seconds. Let's get back on stage.
Oh my gosh. I can only imagine.
My verbally challenged 7-year-old autistic kid doing that. That was fun.
I am impressed with both of you.
I was not over there doing that. She had hair, costume, makeup over there. I was props, so I couldn't go help her out.
Got it.
But it takes a village, and
it does.
Other group, the parents who did hair, makeup, and costume knew her really well. She's always been up with the older kids for dance. She was in with the middle schoolers when she was 7. And before she left elementary, she was in with the high schoolers, which is
wow,
a thing when you have autism to begin with.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference in what even a neurotypical 7-year-old is going to be talking about versus what an 8th grader is going to be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned Sarah was kept back in school because of just the autism and understanding and everything.
I did that on purpose.
Yeah. I can understand that. If her dance skills weren't where they were, she would not have been up with high schoolers. We tried in her private school to keep her back, and they're like, no. So she turned 5 August 8th, and that was the start of school and the cutoff date. So I had my 5-year-old autistic kid in kindergarten, and because she turned 5 the first day of school, her teacher the entire year thought she was 6.
Oh gosh.
That was not fun. She finally figured it out when we pulled her out and went, now we'll homeschool her. And her teacher was like, well, she's really, her autism shows because she's almost 7. And I'm like, no, she's almost 6. Did you not understand me the entire year?
I guess not.
So I can understand keeping her back. How important was it to not just you wanting to keep her back, but to giving Sarah the time to mature and develop keeping her back?
I think it was huge. Really, it was when she was about to start kindergarten that we were starting the Sunrise program for her and thinking, oh, this is helping so much more than anything we've done. If we don't help her really have the space to learn to connect to other people and pay attention to other people, then what's the point of her being in school? What is she going to get from it if she can't pay attention? And so we were really focusing on the social aspect of how to connect with other people, and then felt like when she was ready, that's when we wanted her to move on. So she was in preschool for many, many years, different preschools, but we found one that was really close to us and she could go for just a couple hours, 3 days a week, and with a helper that I sent or with me. And that worked out really well. So then it was as she was 8 that she started kindergarten. and she turned 9 in kindergarten and then started first grade with the St. Anthony program when she was 9. And I feel like that worked well because then when she was in kindergarten, she only needed a helper some of the time. She was ready to do that level of stuff.
We had her in Montessori for preschool, and then the military moved us to where we couldn't have Montessori schools. And I know for us, Montessori was an amazing thing to help her with her autism skill and the skills she needed. I don't think she would have been potty trained when she was without her Montessori teachers.
Wow, that's amazing.
And they sometimes, we'd go into IEP meetings before both her teachers and I were like, nope, we're pulling her out of this program because we're not dealing with the school system. And I'd have to warn them, you can't get mad in the IEP meeting, no matter what they say about her. And they'd be fuming in the meeting. And I'm like, because we were in Florida and she was having meltdowns. Well, with girls in Florida, that gets them listed as aggressive.
Ah, that's tough.
Boy, hammer, teachers, everyone, throw! And they kept saying he just liked girls, even though he kept throwing hammers at everybody above his age, under his age, and everybody the opposite gender.
So
And dogs.
translation real quick of that story is that one of the boys in her class would throw hammers at everyone. And the school system was in there for him because he was part of their preschool program. And they were like, oh no, he's just being a boy, but Lita melting down is aggressive.
Ooh.
And her teacher was like, how is that? And I'm like, because girls are not allowed to show emotions. And showing big emotions like melting down, she must be aggressive because she should be cute and dainty.
That's tough.
And she's over there claiming it's sexist, which it really is. But there's a lot of that's still very sexist.
And it's hard, I think, even as a parent of someone who has meltdowns, I still can have trouble remembering it just means she's overloaded. She's not doing it on purpose. She is just taxed to the max.
I think it helped me that I had meltdowns and gotten everyone telling me, oh, you are horrible. And I'm like, yeah, kiddo, you just go have your meltdown. I'll get back to you when you're done. But, that's coming from 43 years now of dealing with autism myself. So
yeah,
it's a little bit easier, I think, on some of us who grew up autistic than other parents who didn't have that background.
I don't have that, but I will say my parents were really great about giving space for emotions and understanding that if I was having a hard time, I needed to get my sad out or my mad out, and then I would be sparkly and clear and able to think and function and go on with life.
My parents are still like, well, we put you on therapy to deal with this. Why are you going, there are too many people, I'm walking away or I'm going to have a meltdown.
It's good if you can know that and take care of it.
But, my parents were raising kids in the 80s and 90s. It was a totally different thing when we were being raised than this generation.
That's true.
I would love to have you back on. Can we plug the book again and when it's coming out and everything for people?
Sure. Yeah. It's called Watching Sarah Rise, A Journey of Thriving with Autism, and it comes out January 21st. And people can pre-order it now if they want.
Are you okay? This will come out after January 21st. Can we put a link to purchase it in the description for everyone?
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Let me know if you've got a preferred distributor like Barnes & Nobles, Hastings. I think Hastings has gone out of business now. Books A Million, all those great guys. I am so old, I can't remember what bookstores are still in business.
I know it's available through Bookshop, which is a nice way of supporting little independent bookstores. And then it's also on Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
And we'll make sure that we put it the Bookshop thing because I know a few of our favorite local bookstores are either going under or being gobbled up by Barnes & Nobles right now.
Which is growing again. Yeah.
Yeah. My husband went after Christmas and I'm like, more power to you to go 2 days after Christmas. And he's like, oh my gosh, there's people at Barnes & Nobles.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Facebook as Jennifer Celeste Briggs and on Instagram also as Jennifer Celeste Briggs author.
So yeah, the book will be out, so go buy it. I haven't read it yet, but I know it's going to be amazing. I'd love to have you back on after I get a chance to read the book in a couple months, if that's okay
Oh,
with
that
you.
would be amazing. I'd love to.
Because by the time I get done reading the book, I'll probably have a list of questions for you.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you for your time today, Jennifer, and thanks for coming on. And we'll see everyone for Tap Tuesday on Tuesday.
Thank you both so much. This was wonderful.
Can you say thank you, Lita? She's like, thank you. I'm busy braiding my hair.
Looks.
Hello, thank you for watching the podcast, and please subscribe, and also look at the adorable paper. So if you want to subscribe for it, and also please leave a like, and don't forget, if you subscribe to our stuff, you won't miss any of our new podcast stuffies. And also, did you see the adorable paper? Don't you like it?